This video is brought to you by my patrons, my thoughts and opinions, and smug people who have no concern about how their lies will affect others. Hello, and welcome to, or back to, my channel. I'm Kit, and in January and March 2025, Lila Rose's pro-birth nonprofit Live Action posted 2 videos: the next steps of the pro-life movement with the thumbnail How to Abolish Abortion, followed by the future of the pro-life movement with the thumbnail Abolishing Abortion in Our Lifetimes. I have noticed these videos don't tend to do well, but I think it's important to talk about this, because as you can likely tell, since Dobbs, the focus has shifted from overturning Roe to abortion abolishment, and that is something that needs to be talked about more. I'll link an article by the American Prospect that goes deeper into the abolition movement, but in brief, abortion abolitionists want to make abortion illegal and a criminal offense. Quote from the article: "Abortion abolitionism differs from the pro-life movement in other key ways. Abolitionists find the pro-life movement to be insufficiently opposed to abortion, claiming that the pro-life position is too secular, too incrementalist, and too complacent in the aftermath of the Supreme Court's reversal of Roe. Most pro-life organizations have long maintained that because women are the second victims of abortions, and that the majority of abortions occur under some form of duress, individuals who get an abortion should be automatically exempt from criminal prosecution. Abolitionists fundamentally reject this premise, arguing that unless coercion is proven on a case-by-case basis, anyone who has an abortion is an active and willing participant in the murder of her preborn child." End quote. As they say, you give an inch, they'll take a mile. First it was, oh, we just want the issue sent back to the states' rights, you know, and now it's, if someone has an abortion, they need to be tried for homicide. And though I haven't personally seen Live Action or Lila Rose call for women to be tried as murderers, I do think this is telling.
The North Star of our movement is clear as day. We have to abolish abortion. We have to abolish abortion.
They might not lead with, yes, we think anyone who has an abortion is a murderer, but by using their language, they are aligning themselves with abolitionists. And I think it's important to note that abolitionists, like Live Action, believe that there is no reason to have an abortion. So no matter how justified or safe you think you are, that is not a guarantee. And they are not above twisting language to make that seem like a truth. Speaking of which,
we have the most powerful resource on our side. We have truth.
If they have truth on their side, why do they have to lie so much? I've done videos discussing Lila Rose and Live Action before, and I'll link them below, but every time I look into something they're claiming, the facts are never what they say. Dark Matter 2525 recently did a video about Trump's war on anti-Christian bias, where he discusses those pro-life protesters that Trump pardoned. I'll link that below as well, and TLDR, Lila and co pretended they were just innocent protesters lawfully taking a stand against abortion. That is not actually what happened.
The Biden Department of Justice sought to squelch faith in the public square by bringing federal criminal charges and obtaining in numerous cases multi-year prison sentences against nearly 24 peaceful pro-life Christians for praying and demonstrating outside abortion facilities. I cannot stress enough how much of a lie that is. Trump did indeed pardon about 24 people who were involved with these abortion clinic protests. I looked into the people Trump pardoned and what they actually did, which included admissions, live-streamed video, guilty pleas, and long felony criminal histories of doing these things, including arrests and convictions that were done by the Department of Justice under Trump's first administration, not just Biden's. First of all, these people were found guilty of felony conspiracy. In other words, they got together and coordinated a plan to commit felonies, and then they acted upon that plan. They would do things like lie about needing medical attention, make an appointment pretending to be a patient, and then when someone from the clinic unlocked the door to let them in as a patient, they forcibly held the door open for their dozen co-conspirators to charge in, trespass inside the building, physically occupy and blockade the clinic, including all the doors within the building. In the DC case, in which Trump pardoned everyone, They knocked a nurse to the floor and injured her. They came in with bags filled with ropes and chains. They took all the chairs in the waiting room and barricaded them against the entrance so nobody could leave or enter. And they chained themselves up. One of the people Trump pardoned, Bevelyn Williams, injured a woman by crushing her hand in the door. When the woman screamed that her hand was being crushed, she refused to let her hand out. She said, quote, "We're going to terrorize you so good. Your business is over, mama," unquote. Her blockade at a medical center in Fort Myers, Florida, resulted in a dozen patient delays, including 3 of whom were, quote, scheduled for time-sensitive procedures that could have resulted in bleeding, infection, and significant pain without timely treatment, unquote, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Trump pardoned her under the narrative that she was persecuted for being a Christian. Imagine the person you love the most in this world going through that, through pain, bleeding, and infection because of these assholes, and then the president to paint those assholes as the real victims who were persecuted simply for peacefully praying.
So, again, if truth is on their side, why lie? But moving on, we're just going to jump right in as to what their next steps are to abolishing abortion.
Yeah, and to echo what Lila just said there, abortion has been on state ballots 17 times since the Dobbs decision, and abortion has won 14 of those 17 times, and it would have won 15 times, except that Florida had a 60% threshold.
Remember this. Every time abortion is up for a vote, people vote for it to be legal. This man even admits that. And in what I think is some attempt at correlation trickery, he also says that whenever a state house passes a pro-life law, the governors have sailed to, re-election. However, being asked directly if you want abortion to be legal or not, and voting for a governor, even one who signed a so-called pro-life bill into law, at least in my opinion, those are 2 different things. Nonetheless, I guess they need to cling onto that correlation because they go on to claim, actually, I'm sorry, we need to stop for a moment because this is too ridiculous.
And so it's just very interesting to see that when the politician can do the pro-life action and then run for re-election, they'll win. When the left gets to control, mainly because of funding, as Lila pointed out, the messaging on these direct ballot questions, citizens go to the polls and they think it's either all abortion or no abortion, and they end up voting for all abortion.
Setting aside the baseless claim of the left is so well funded we can't compete, this is just nonsense. It is a vote between abortion and no abortion. Their whole thing is abolishing abortion entirely, which means no abortion. But then they try to pretend that, no, really, they're okay with it in certain circumstances, and I would like to remind everyone that we've seen this before. We just want to send it to the states' rights, and 3 years later, we're talking about charging women with murder. But that is what all this is about. Wordplay. Lila lays it all out for us.
So we ran polling through Trafalgar, a big polling company, and we found that in a blue state, pro-choice and pro-lifers, Democrats and Republicans being polled, it was I think over 1,000 people. We found that over 60% wanted abortions to be illegal, wanted children to be protected. When you ask them the question about abortion, describing what the abortion was. So, for example, if you ask people in a poll in Florida, do you want abortion to be banned in the first trimester? The majority might say no, right? And so everyone's like, they want abortion, they want abortion. But if you ask them, would you want to protect the child by law when their heart is beating and they will be killed via starvation, chemical starvation from a pill, the abortion pill? You describe what that abortion pill does, it starves them to death. Then the majority of voters say, no, we want that. They say, yes, we want the child to be protected. So it's incredible how just changing the messaging can flip a poll simply by speaking the truth about what abortion is.
So if you emotionally manipulate people, they poll the way you want them to. Well, I appreciate the rare moment of honesty at least, but it doesn't last long before we get back to it. Moving on to Lila's interview with Jean Mancini and Jenny Leichter, the former and current, respectively, president of the March for Life.
This issue is not settled, despite what some judges or some, a pro-abortion activist might tell you. The American people never accepted the Roe regime, and the issue was not settled.
Polling shows that, yes, the majority of Americans do want abortion to be legal. So what does she mean the American people never accepted the Roe regime, and what on earth is the Roe regime? Granted, this is the same woman who called J.D. Vance charismatic, so perhaps we shouldn't take her too seriously.
And I just don't think we can overstate the importance of, again, that moment of solidarity. And for the vice president, our young, charismatic, probably longtime future leader to come out and say very plainly, America is fundamentally a pro-life country, right? And here's what this means to us. It means protecting the unborn. It also means protecting families who need a hand, like his own family and his own mother growing up.
I love vague statements like, it means protecting families that need a hand. I'm going to need her to explain how Vance or any other Republican politician is going to do that when they're chomping at the bit to cut programs that assist those people who need a hand. Although it does occur to me that this woman might not be the brightest bulb. Can I help you?
How do we protect American women from the dangers of the chemical abortion regime, right?
What is the chemical abortion regime? Is she just throwing in the word regime because she thinks it makes something sound scary?
Without the shackles of Roe, I think that our kids are going to have so much more freedom to really embrace the beauty and dignity of unborn human life.
I would like to note that this woman has 3 kids, at least 2 of which were born under the shackles of Roe. So please, I'm very curious about how Roe shackled people. Does she explain any of these regimes or shackles? No, of course not. Anyway, I just want to take this moment to remind everyone of the authoritarian tendencies of Lila Rose.
No, you don't have unfettered right to do whatever you want with your body. There's a lot of laws that govern our body.
Remember when conservatives were pretending to be the party of freedom? I kind of miss those days. But anyway, they're slippery, but if you pay attention, it's all there. Lila and fellow believers want abortion in all cases to be illegal, and in cases where it's unavoidable, such as ectopic pregnancies or life-threatening complications, they simply don't call it an abortion. They also blame the sexual revolution for abortion and believe that if people only had sex after marriage and if contraception didn't exist, there would be fewer abortions. You might be thinking, but Kit, contraception prevents unwanted pregnancies from happening. Well, yes, but not in Lila's mind. In her mind, well, I'm really not sure. She either thinks people wouldn't be having sex if they didn't want to risk pregnancy, or she thinks a lack of contraception would make people accept pregnancy as natural and thus something they can't do anything about. It's hard to tell. And her, you don't have the right to do whatever with your body, there's laws governing the body, is both telling and terrifying. Does she think governments should be legislating what kind of sex people can have? Does she think people should be punished for having sex outside of marriage? But at the end of the day, it's all a sham. Lila and co don't care about babies or families. This is the same woman who thinks being gay or trans is a sin. It's just about control, plain and simple. And I wish I was surprised that despite her claims about caring about women and children, Lila has said nothing about the rate of sepsis soaring in Texas, nothing about the rise in maternal mortality, nothing about the rise in infant mortality. But again, it's not about loving them both or protecting the unborn, it's about control. In conclusion, whether or not you want kids, whether or not you would have an abortion, at the end of the day, bodily autonomy is the most important thing we have. If we don't have that, we have nothing. And yes, there are laws regarding what people can and can't do with their bodies. No cigarettes until 18, no drinking until 21. But that is very different from being forced to keep another being alive, regardless of the effects this effort has on you. You will not die if you don't drink until your 21st birthday. And Lila is very disingenuous for trying to pretend those are the same things. And I don't see her out there attempting to rally support for mandatory organ donation even after death or mandatory blood donation, both of which would also save lives, and the latter of which is much less invasive than pregnancy. But again, it's about control under the guise of love. And that's it for this video. Please feel free to share your thoughts below, and I'll see you in the next one. Yes, Emma.